Hi guys, it's Miss Lisa, and I'm out on the porch for Porch Time Story Time, and today I have a book for you called Philippe and Claudette by Mark Teague. Philippe and Claudette. I think you will like this one. For Joseph. On adoption day, all of the pets at the animal shelter lined up for inspection. "It's time," said Mrs. Barrett, "for us to look our best." Then one by one they were adopted, until only two pets were remaining. And you know who they were? They were Philippe and Claudette. "What will I do with you?" fretted Mrs. Barrett. Usually her pets were adopted quickly, but not these two. They had been at the shelter for ages. The problem, in Philippe's opinion, was Claudette. "You will never be adopted," he told the dog, "because you are constantly barking." "What?" said Claudette. "Bark, bark, what? What, bark?" To be fair, Claudette did not always bark. Sometimes she tore the stuffing from out of her toys. Sometimes she ran in circles. Sometimes she bounced against the walls. She drove Philippe crazy. "Please," he said, "I'm trying to think." He was trying to think about his future home. Perhaps it would be a beautiful country estate where he might lounge beside a pool, or maybe it would be a penthouse apartment where he could eat sardines from a dainty bowl. Claudette belched, "Brr," and the dream faded. "No," said Philippe, when she brought him her ball. "I will not throw your little ball. It's covered in spittle. Anyway, cats do not throw." More puppies came to the shelter. Then more kittens. And soon it was adoption day again. "Time to look our best," said Mrs. Barrett. And they did. And they were all adopted. Well, all except Philippe and Claudette. "What will I do with you?" she said. Philippe thought she should worry more about Claudette. "You will never be adopted," said the dog. To the dog, "because you snore when you're wide awake." "Snork?" snored Claudette. "Snork, snork, snork." My dog makes it sound like this. To be fair, Claudette did not always snore. Sometimes she dug holes in the yard, and sometimes she chased moths, and sometimes she rolled in the garbage. She drove Philippe mad. It would be difficult for either of them to be adopted when Claudette made such a poor impression. She brought him a toy. "No, I will not play tug of war," said Philippe. "Cats do not tug." More kittens came to the shelter, and then more puppies. Adoption day arrived again. Philippe groomed his fur and straightened his whiskers. Claudette wagged her tail. One by one, the pets were adopted, all except Philippe and Claudette. "Oh, dear, dear, dear," said Mrs. Barrett. "What will I do with the two of you?" It was clear to Philippe that Claudette was the problem. "You will never be adopted," he said, "as long as you have dry dog food stuck on your nose." Slurp, licking her nose. Slurp, slurp. To be fair, Claudette did not always have dry dog food on her nose. Sometimes she had branches stuck to her collar. And sometimes she had leaves stuck to her paws. And sometimes her whole body was covered in mud. She drove Philippe insane. What could he do with a dog like her? She wagged her tail hopefully. "No, I will not play hide and seek," said Philippe. "I do not wish to be it. Anyway, it is perfectly obvious where you are hiding." Another adoption day came and went, and so did the puppies, and so did the kittens, and as usual, only Philippe and Claudette remained. Mrs. Barrett was closing the shelter when a gentleman arrived. "I wish to adopt a pet," he said, and Philippe sat up straight. "We only have the two," said Mrs. Barrett. "Philippe is quiet, but a bit grumpy." "And the dog?" asked the man. "Oh, Claudette barks and chews and digs holes in the yard." "Anything else?" "She runs in circles and rolls in garbage and snores when she's wide awake." "Fine," said the gentleman. "I will take her." And he did. Philippe was stunned. Who in their right mind would choose to adopt Claudette? "You miss her, don't you?" said Mrs. Barrett. Certainly not, thought Philippe. He waited for the next adoption day. And he waited, and he waited, and he waited, and time passed very slowly. The animal shelter seemed very quiet. He stared at Claudette's toys and her ball and her empty bowl. I'm sure she's fine, said Mrs. Barrett. Philippe sighed. Adoption day came, and the puppies went, and so did the kittens. Philippe hid in the back room. After a while, Mrs. Barrett joined him. She was closing the shelter when a gentleman returned with Claudette. I'm bringing her back, he said. She is not the dog I thought she was. She doesn't play or chew or run in circles. She doesn't even bark. All she does is mope. As soon as he left, Claudette began to bark. Bark, bark. She licked Mrs. Barrett, and she chased Philippe around the room. What will I do with you two? Said Mrs. Barrett. But really, it was quite obvious what they would do. She adopted them. For dinner, she fed them sardines in dainty bowls, and afterward they played hide and seek. Philippe was very happy to be it. That is Philippe and Claudette by Mark Teague. I hope you liked that one. I'm Miss Lisa, and I'll be back next time for more Porch Time Story Time. Have a good day. Bye-bye.